Hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today is a vocalist for one of the most high energy bands in rock. From Ashes to New are about to release their fourth full length album called Blackout on July 28th. Please welcome vocalist Danny Case. Welcome, Danny.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. Pleasure to have you. And so let's begin with Blackout. It's an ambitious record. It's a complicated record. I mean that in a really good way because there's a lot of layers to it musically and lyrically. There's a theme and a concept to it. Talk a little bit about what that theme is behind Blackout.
Yeah, so before going into the studio, we had kind of recognized that we enjoy writing heavier music, and we took a step back and looked at, what put this band on the map and what do our fans like. And we felt like Day One, the first record, was really the album that put the band on the map. And we wanted to return to that level of intensity and heaviness in our music. And so upon writing that record and working on it, the time that we were working on it and having that thought in the back of our mind as well of kind of going back to a heavier sound, we, thought to ourselves, we were working on the song Armageddon at the time. We're like, this feels like it could be almost like a prequel to Day One, with the art depicting, a kid on a new planet looking back at the old planet that's falling apart. We thought, why not take this and make it, conceptually a prequel to that album, and having the kid on the planet as it's falling apart, reaching for the new planet. And that's kind of where the idea all came from. It was kind of like, between thinking of returning to a heavier sound, and then the time that we were writing the record, which was, early to mid 2021, and everything that had just, transpired, we were like, feels like the perfect time to have. We were actually going to call it Armageddon at first. That was going to be the name of the record, but then we decided to call it Blackout, because the first step to Armageddon, at least in our eyes in the modern day, is if the grid were to go down. Right. So that was the idea behind the record, and behind the sound was returning to something heavy. And we figured, an apocalypse would probably be pretty heavy. So, that kind of encompasses the entire idea.
And as you said, the record kind of refers back to Day One, both in sound and lyrical story. It was a very different band back then. You weren't in the lineup yet. Did you have to kind of immerse yourself in Day One to get in the headspace for Blackout, or were you already there from live performances and things like that?
Yeah, so we referenced Day One as far as its intensity and heaviness, but not the actual music itself. So, because at this point in time, we're different people, we have different interests, we have different influences and inspirations. So we wanted to bring back the level of heaviness rather than the actual sound of that record. So, we wanted to, we don't want to take steps back, we want to take steps forward. So we looked at that album and the intensity and heaviness that it brought, and we said, we want to make music that's heavy like that again. So it's still a step forward in our evolution. It just brings back that kind of heaviness.
And now, what's the creative process for this band like? Is there a typical way that a song starts off? Does it usually start with somebody bringing in an idea, or does it depend on the song itself?
Yeah, it's a case-by-case scenario or situation, where sometimes someone will have something that they've kind of made halfway, and they'll bring it to the table, and everybody else has fresh ears and can bring in ideas and put in their own spin on it. Other times it's all of us sitting in a room working on a song from its inception, and it just depends on whatever the song calls for. We try not to force anything. All of our most successful songs were literally written in a day, and we don't do that on purpose. It just it ends up just kind of happening where, you know, we're 90% of the way through a record and we're like, we need one more song. And we have like 2 days left to figure this out, or it happens after we recorded the whole album. They're like, we need to go in and record one more song. We only have 2 days to do it. Sometimes, you know, that'll happen. Other times we work on songs for months. It all depends on just the flow of things and where creative juices are. And I'm a big believer in whatever's meant to be is meant to be, and will happen in its own time. So sometimes it's one day, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's Lance coming with a full idea, or me coming with a musical bed and an idea. Other times it's all of us together in a room figuring it out.
Yeah, you guys stayed really busy during the pandemic. You had 3 volumes of the Quarantine Chronicles. You put this record together. I mean, as a band, were you trying to stay active and create through that pandemic? Or, you know, when it comes specifically to Blackout, when it was over and opening up, did you look back and say, you know what, that kind of fits with where our headspace is going for the theme of this record?
Yeah, you know, it was kind of a dual reason that we did all that. For one, you know, we were like, we need to find a way to stay busy during all this shutdown. Everybody's at home, everybody's on their screens, and there's no live music, there's no touring, there's no nothing. We are also at home doing nothing. So we were like, we needed a way to stay sane. And we also felt it was a good way to engage with fans and give them something while they're stuck at home too. And that was really the only reason behind it. You know, we needed purpose for ourselves. And we felt like it was a good opportunity to give the fans something that they otherwise normally wouldn't get. So, you know, playing all those covers and all that stuff, you know, that was a unique opportunity. And we thought it was a good service to the fans to keep their heads on during all of that, and to keep our heads on straight during all of that too.
Yeah, without a doubt. And yeah, for me, I think Blackout is probably the strongest record that this lineup of the band has done. There's a lot of different sounds and styles through it. And you know, for me, when it comes to music, I mean, you know, I'm a guitar guy, I'm a lyric guy, because that's what I heard growing up and that's what I was used to. That's what drew me into music. You know, for you, what was it that kind of drew you on your musical path?
So I 100% agree about this being our strongest album. Sound of it is incredible. The team that worked on it, that recorded it, and that mixed it, we've never had anything this high quality. And then also the music we feel is the best music we've made so far. What drew me in, at least in the beginning of my musical journey, was I was in 6th grade, and there was a talent show, and I'd always really loved music growing up. My parents were always playing classic rock in the radio and at home. So I always had a love for music. I was always singing in church and engaging in that way. But what really got me into music was at a 6th grade talent show. One of my best friends at the time played drums to a Linkin Park song, and he wasn't just some kid smacking the drums. This kid was like, he was on the, I can't even remember what it was, the Empire Statesman Marching Band, frontline snare, like really, really good drummer at the age of 11. So like watching him play, I was just like, I have to do this. This is what I have to do. And so I, you know, got a little practice pad and like sticks and started like, you know, playing a little bit. Got my first kit after that. And you couldn't pull me off that drum set if you tried. That was all. I stopped hanging out with friends. I stopped going and doing stuff. That was all I did, all the way through high school. And it evolved from drums to bass and then guitar. And then when I joined my first band, they needed a singer. And I was like, well, I don't care what I have to do. I just want to be in the band. So I I got stuck with singing. I wanted to be a drummer, but I got stuck with singing. And yeah, so, and never looked back. I sucked and sucked and sucked and sucked and sucked until I, got kind of okay at it. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was kind of my musical journey.
Well, it's funny. You could be added to that long list of drummers who became singers. I mean, Sully Erna from Godsmack, Todd La Torre from Queensryche. We could add you to that list now.
100%, man. This is not the job that I asked for. Well, I'm happy to be here. So,
Yeah. Yeah, but it's funny. You mentioned growing up listening to classic rock around the house, and I mean, I'm a firm believer that every subgenre of rock traces back to David Bowie. And his Heroes record, which really kind of brought this electronic music into the mainstream. Oddly enough, there's a song on there called Blackout, which was in my head as I'm listening to your record, and just put in the back of your head would be a great song for you guys to cover. I think you would do an amazing job on it. But I guess, I mean, it's kind of a long way of asking, do you look back to some of those early influences? When I listen to your music, you hear Bowie, you hear Kraftwerk, bands like that. Is that something that you guys listen to, or is that something that you picked from your influences who were influenced by them?
I think, at least for me, I think it was just a developmental thing where you don't really notice it or pay attention. It's like English for us. Like,
Yeah.
really, actively try to speak English. It's just something that happened developmentally along the way. So for me, having all that music around me all the time, I never actively went and listened to it as I got older. Every time a song comes on, though, no matter what it is, I know what that song is. And that's somehow in my subconscious and in my musical mind, it's all there. And yet at the same time, I never know when I'm drawing from it. So, and I mean, that to me is just the blessing of growing up around that music. I feel like it formed my musical taste and my musical mind early on, without me ever even knowing it.
Yeah.
And so I there's a special place in my heart for all that music. And at the same time, when I reference or draw inspiration from music, it's like all of my music that I listen to on a daily basis. So which is like Avenged Sevenfold, and I listen to a lot of modern, really like metal bands. Been listening to more I Prevail.
Great band.
Of Mice and Men. There's so many. Periphery. They're a very progressive metal band. Yeah, I never really go back to those classic rock influences, but I owe I feel like my entire musical career to them.
Yeah. It all builds as the future goes on, which is just the great thing about music. And one of the real hot button issues in music right now is the use of tracks playing live. And I mean, you get some of those classic rock bands who literally can't do it vocally or musically anymore, so they kind of rely on that. But then I think at the other end of the spectrum, you have some of the newer bands where, there's so much texture and sound in the music that you have to have it in order to replicate the feel. Where do you guys stand on using tracks live?
So yeah, this is a great question, because we have electronics and symphonic aspects. There's obviously multiple vocal layers. There's multiple guitars, there's bass, and we are a four-piece, or we're a four-piece for the longest time. We actually just added someone to play second guitar on stage. For the longest time, we were just like, everyone's using tracks. Who cares if our bass is in our track? At least we are singing all of our parts live. All of our guitar parts that we play are live. We don't do we don't fake anything. And for us, for the longest time, that was enough. And then I came to a realization that it wasn't. And that people were looking at us and going, where is all this sound coming from with one guitarist and two vocalists on stage and a drummer? And, you know, at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is what the viewer is taking in. So added a second guitarist. We still have the bass in our tracks, but now all of our guitars are live. All of our vocals are live. There might be some maybe like backing like layers, but for the most part, all of our vocals are live. And for me, my stance is like, you have to, most bands nowadays have to have tracks, because for one, if you want to be able to, you know, replicate something live, you need to be able to have all those sounds. And you're either going to have a 20-piece band, which is unsustainable and won't fit on stage, or you're just going to have some things that are backtracked. And to me, that's all fine. The only thing to me that is not okay is lip syncing.
Yes.
That will never be okay for me, at least in my own heart. I have to sing my parts live. I have to. Like, I can't. We don't even really use, like I said, we don't really use any vocal tracks live. There might be like some like completely verbed out like backing layers, but as far as like all the live vocals, like I will never pull the mic away from myself for the crowd to sing, and then, you know, still a voice going. That'll never be us. I spent way too much time and worked my ass off way too long to not take the credit for what I'm singing live. So we do get accused of lip syncing, and there is nothing that pisses me off more, because I sucked for a long time and I busted my ass to be able to sing the songs live and do them justice. And no track is taking that away from me. So, and that's the same mentality that Matt has. You know, he goes out there and he sounds like the record, and he's a great vocalist. And so, at least for us, we'll never be tracking vocals. We will never be lip syncing. All the backing stuff, what we can do, we will do. So we added a second guitarist. Whenever we have like, kind of like software beats that our drummer can play, he has a roll-in pad set up that he can play the beat on. So we will do everything that we can to make as much as we can live. But tracks, it's kind of the way forward. And, you know, you get to play to a click track, so everything is as tempoed as it should be. And that's kind of just where we stand. Yeah.
And speaking of live performances, I mean, you guys just finished a great tour with Shinedown. You have an amazing summer tour coming up with Motionless in White and In This Moment. What can fans expect from the band on the summer tour coming up?
We're going to try to keep the level of production as high as we did on the Shinedown tour. Shinedown was awesome, and so was 3 Days Grace, and they allowed us to do what we wanted to do as long as we were off stage in a timely manner. And we were, and they allowed us to do everything that we wanted to do, and helped make that happen, and made sure everything went smoothly. So as long as we have the approval from In This Moment and Motionless in White, we will be bringing a high level of production again. It won't quite be the same thing. We're going to change it up a little bit and do things a little differently, but it'll still be a great show to look at. And that's what we set out to do. You know, this is a lot of the times, you know, for bands, they might feel that like, you know, touring is for them and going out and playing shows is for them. And in a way it is, but it is ultimately for the viewer and for the fans. So we want to bring the best show forward that we can. So hopefully we will have our clearances. I'm actually sitting where I work on our light show, and getting things ready and plot it out so that we can send it over and say, hey, can you approve this for us so that we can move forward? So that's that. They should also expect maybe a new song or two off the new album to be played live. Obviously the ones that we have already released, Heartache, Nightmare, those will probably be played, and then there might be one other one. And it'll be a high energy show. It'll be fun. It's a good lineup. So anyone who's contemplating going, definitely go.
I'll probably be catching you guys when you get here in Connecticut in early July. Definitely looking forward to it.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the first shows, isn't it?
Yeah, it's early on. I think it might be the second or third night of the tour.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So looking forward to it. Well, we've been spending some time here with Danny Case. The band is From Ashes to New. The record is called Blackout. It's out everywhere July 28th. They're on the road throughout the country this summer with Motionless in White and In This Moment. Danny, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really like the record. You guys did an amazing job on it. Best of luck going forward. And hopefully we could do this again sometime.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me.
You got it.